Medicare is a much bigger problem. There is no income cap on Medicare tax. We all pay 1.45% of our income into Medicare, no matter how much we make. So how do we deal with this $36 trillion problem, which is kind of the same problem? You know, in 20 years, we're only going to have 2 workers for each Medicare beneficiary. There's a lot of discussion right now about health care, and people are screaming about the public option because we don't want government health care. Most of us in this room are going to have government health care. I'm going to use Medicare when I'm older. My employer recently announced that they're no longer covering retirees with our health insurance plan, so I'm going to be using Medicare. This is why we have a $36 trillion problem, because pretty much all of us, unless we're wealthy, like some of us, and we can buy our own health insurance when we're retired, we're all going to be on Medicare. So I'm going to throw up a book here. This is a great book. Everybody in Congress should be required to read this book. T.R. Reid, it's called The Healing of America, has done a survey of health plans, of healthcare systems around the world. I'm a scientist. The way you solve a problem is you look at all the possible solutions. You look at the models and what's happened, what other people have done, and you pick the best one. So the way we deal with this $36 trillion problem is we have to reduce the cost per person of health insurance and health care in the United States. And in my opinion, the way we do that is we have to get everybody insured in the United States so that everybody's contributing. We require everybody to buy car insurance. That's what insurance is. Everybody pays into a pool. Health insurance right now is so inefficient. The overhead for private health insurance is about 15%. For Medicare, it's about 3%. 15% of $36 trillion. That's $5 trillion. We can also implement malpractice insurance reform, something that's been in the news. And statistics show that if we implement real malpractice insurance reform so that doctors aren't practicing defensive medicine, you know, ordering extra tests because they're afraid they're going to be sued, that'll reduce it another 3%. And then just increasing the efficiency through information systems and things like that, we can reduce it more. So if we can get the cost of health insurance and health care per person down over the next 75 years, we're also going to have to raise the Medicare tax. There's no other way about it. We've had career politicians for my entire life spending money like drunken sailors and giving everybody everything they ask for without coming up with a way for paying for it. They've built up $50 trillion of money that we owe. It's going to be painful. You know, this is what you won't hear from Republicans or Democrats. They won't ask you to make sacrifices. We're going to have to make sacrifices if we care about our elderly, if we care about our children. All right, the third issue I'll talk about is the national debt and the budget deficit. It has exploded ever since 2000. It's always been a problem. 20 years ago, I was very upset that the national debt was $2 trillion. Now it's $12 trillion. We had a period of time in the 90s where we had some responsible legislation. They had a cap on discretionary spending, and they had a real pay-as-you-go bill that required taxes and entitlement programs to literally pay as they go. If they added a new program or if they increased spending, they had to say how they were going to pay for it. Unfortunately, all kinds of loopholes creeped into this legislation in the 90s, and they're really not effective anymore. So how do we deal with the fact that we have a $1.5 trillion budget deficit this year, and that they project that our national debt is going to double again in the next 5 to 10 years? We have to restrain Congress because they've proved to us that they're irresponsible. They can't do it themselves. We had 1 year of a surplus in the 90s, a real surplus, and they went crazy. They thought, oh, now we can spend as much as we want. Both parties are equally at fault. Talking a little bit more, and we're going to have to increase revenue. Does anybody know what the top income tax rate was in the 1950s? 91%. If someone today suggested raising the top tax rate in the United States to 91%, they would be thrown out of the country as a socialist or a communist. But from 1951 to 1963, the top income tax rate in this country was 91%. Do you know what it is now? 35%. Right now, talking about tax fairness, someone who makes $100,000 a year now, if you add up all the taxes they pay, excise taxes like gasoline taxes and cigarette taxes and alcohol taxes, property taxes, income taxes, state income taxes, if you add up all the taxes that we pay, Social Security taxes, Medicare taxes, someone who makes $100,000 a year now pays a larger percentage of their income in taxes than somebody who makes $2 million a year. That's wrong. We need to get rid of the alternative minimum tax, and we need to increase the top tax rate for people who make above, let's say, $200,000 a year. And that's the only way we're going to deal with the fact that we have crushing debt in this country. You know, Peter Schiff was right that if we don't do something about this, we're going to have runaway inflation sometime that's going to make the current economic crisis look like small potatoes. We've got to get our debt under control. And the only way to do it is to reduce spending and increase revenue. We've been the beneficiaries of irresponsible politicians who've been spending. They've added $12 trillion to our economy that didn't really exist. We're going to have to pay for it someday. And if we change the slope of the curves now, it's going to be a lot less painful than if we wait 20 or 30 years when all of a sudden, bam, the curves for Social Security and the curves for Medicare cross the zero line and they start going negative at $1 trillion a year. If we change the curve now, it's going to be painful. But if you change the slope a little bit now, it'll be a lot less painful than if we ignore it for another 20 years like Congress has been doing. I'm one of 3 candidates that will be on the ballot in November 2010. I ask you to go to my website, read my positions, send me an email if you'd like. I'll answer any email personally, answer your questions, think about me over the next 14 months, get me into the debate after the primaries. You know, tell pollsters that you'll vote for me, even if you won't, just to get me into that debate. I think you want my voice in that debate. Thank you very much, and I'll see you around.